Kung wine mas romantic. And you think of all of these very nice aspirational things when you think of wine, like culture, art, sophistication. I even asked ChatGPT. I said, ChatGPT, make me a picture of Asians drinking wine. And this is the picture that ChatGPT gave me. Elegant people in suits, women in gowns drinking wine. So this is the universal appeal for wine as a product. Would you guys agree with me? But if you look at the consumption per capita of wine, okay, so you take the total amount of wine consumed in a country, you divide it by the population. Let's go to France first. Medyo lasing in France, diba? They're drinking 50 liters of wine per person per year. That's 1 bottle per week per person. In the US, you have 1 bottle per month. Of course, Australians like to drink, so about 2 bottles per month. And in Philippines, 1 coffee cup worth of wine per person per year. So you have hundreds of times more consumption per capita in these developed countries than you do in the Philippines. And so I'm reminded of the lesson my dad taught me about the 2 African shoe salesmen. Diba, dalawang shoe salesmen go to Africa. The first one goes there, he sees the mga paa of the Africans and he sees walang sapatos. Tapos he goes back to his boss, he says, "Boss, walang negosyo dito kasi walang sapatos," right? The second shoe salesman goes to Africa. He sees the exact same thing. And he goes back to his boss. What does he say? "Grabe, boss, ang opportunity to sell shoes sa Africa." They saw the exact same thing. They draw a completely different conclusion as to what the market opportunity is. And we have market research to show us that in the last 5-10 years, wine has been the fastest growing category in the alcoholic beverage industry. So, if the appeal for wine, sobrang mataas, it's so high, bakit ganon? Why is the consumption of wine so low in the Philippines? And we think it's really a simple answer. We think it's the taste of the product, we think it's the price of the product, and we think it's the familiarity of a brand. Okay, first one is taste. Ang Pinoy gusto niya matamis. We love things that are sweet. We love our spaghetti from Jollibee. Sobrang matamis. We love halo-halo. We love everything that is sweet. And what many people don't know is that in order to make a sweet wine, mas mahirap ang gawin. It's a much more complicated process in terms of winemaking. So wine, no matter how expensive, even if I'm talking about Chateau Margaux 2009, that Chateau Margaux came from grape juice. And at some point, that grape juice was matamis. But what happens in wine is wine goes through a process called fermentation, where the yeast converts the sugar into alcohol. Kung ubos na ang pagkain, dry ang wine. And that's why most wines are not sweet. But we knew here in the Philippines that Filipinos wanted something sweet. So we had to innovate the way to only allow some of the sugars to convert into alcohol. The most popular Novellino wines are only 4.5% alcohol. So mas mababa ang alcohol, mas mataas ang sweetness. Gets mo? Is that clear? So the first factor was taste. The second factor, of course, is price. It has to be affordable to the Filipino people. My dad mentioned that we're on a missionary job to get more Filipinos to consume wine. So we have to make sure that the wine is affordable to the Filipino people. If you look at the wealth distribution of the Philippines, you look at the richest of 70% of Filipinos, after all of their costs of rent and utilities and all these different expenses, they still have to save almost an entire day's wage to be able to afford 1 bottle. So we know that the magic price point is somewhere between 200 and 300 pesos. So the first factor, taste. The second factor, price. The third factor, familiarity of a brand. I think all of you would agree when you go to a supermarket and you see hundreds of different wine brands, masyado magulo, di ba? Let's be honest, I'm in the market and I think that most people, they just think, kung mahal masarap, kung mura hindi masarap. Am I right? And it's just not true. We know from the business, first of all, that some of those wines are the exact same wine with a different label, first of all. And second of all, you do not get $900 more utility out of a bottle of wine that's $1,000 versus one that's $100. And we learned that literally from University of California, Davis, who did a study on it. So, consumers are overwhelmed with an extensive wine selection. Bakit ganon? Why are there so many different brands when you go to the wine section of a supermarket? And the reason is simple. Wine is a very old product, and it's really made to suit the taste preferences in the region that it was made. Historically, so let's go back like 500 years, you would have a estate or a chateau, and on that estate you would plant the vineyard. And from that estate and on that property, you would do the winemaking, you would do the fermentation, you would do the blending, you would do the bottling, and then you would distribute it in the region where that wine or that grape juice was grown. But what's happened today with globalization is that every segment of the supply chain has become independent of each other. So now you have a farmer, basically a landowner, who plants a vineyard, and he's just a farmer. And he sells his grape juice to a winemaker. The winemaker sells his wine to a blender. The blender blends it, sometimes sells it to a bottler. And the bottler sells it to a distributor, and the distributor sells a multitude of different brands. But what we do differently is we source the grape juice as a commodity, because all you need to make wine is grape juice. And we're able to get the best prices from all over the world, from Chile, from Spain, from Argentina, from Italy, from the US. And we can look at it and say, is this wine good for winemaking? And then we own the rest of the supply chain from there. We do as much of course, the making of the wine, the fermentation, the bottling, the blending, and we distribute as much as we can. A quick lesson here. My dad always gives me a lesson in economics. Why do third world countries stay third world countries? Because what we do is we export our sugar at the lowest possible price, and we buy it back from the country in the form of candy. Diba? Who wins in that transaction? We've reversed that trend. We source the grape juice for the lowest price, and we put the value added in the Philippines. And by doing so, we've been able to address those three factors of taste, price, and familiarity. Taste, because we can make a consistent product to our specifications. We joke that every year is a good year at Novellino. 2, price. We can offer our wines at an affordable price point. And then 3, maybe this is the biggest one, we can invest in our brand with full confidence. You know, we have among the most followed wine brand pages in the entire world. I think we're number 3, behind Moet and Chandon, and I think there's maybe Barefoot, and then there's Novellino. Those companies are way bigger than us, but it just goes to show how strong of an impact we have on the culture here in the Philippines, and how strong of a brand we have. This is a video my wife made lately. Thank you very much. As you can see, we have a lot of organic engagement from our fans as well. So we market wine like a lifestyle product. Through doing this, we've been able to achieve market leadership. So as you can see here, in terms of volume of wine, so liters of wine consumed, analysts say that we have as much as 41.6% market share, which is quite high. And thank you. And you know what's amazing about this? Remember I mentioned earlier, the same study shows that the wine category is growing every single year at a compound annual growth rate of around 5%. And look what happens to Novellino consistently every single year. We're taking more and more market share. So what does that mean? It means that Novellino is driving the growth of consumption, of wine consumption in the Philippines. But more importantly, what it means that Novellino is creating a wine drinking culture in this country. Thank you guys very much.